Hi, my name's Venetia. I used to believe that love, especially from your parents, was supposed to protect you. But on my sister's birthday, my father smashed a cake into my face because I refused to sign over the deed to my house. As her gift. They clapped. My mother smiled. My sister filmed it. But that wasn't the first betrayal, just the one that went public. What do you do when your own family scripts your downfall and expects you to say thank you? Would you fight back, or just leave quietly? Because I didn't just walk away from that party. I walked straight into the truth they tried to bury. Do you want to know what happened next? And just like that, the house I thought was mine no longer felt like home. It was a Saturday morning, late spring, and the air carried that kind of stillness that made the bird song feel louder than usual. I stood barefoot on the kitchen tiles I chose 3 years ago, brushed ceramic in pewter ash, because Callista once called my taste boring, and I wanted something neutral she couldn't mock. Sunlight stretched across the floor, and the smell of my favorite dark roast filled the room. It should have been peaceful. It used to be. Now the silence felt too thick. I could hear the ticking of the thermostat in the hallway, the kind of silence that makes you think someone's listening from the other side of the wall. I'd just opened the mail. A thick white envelope from Sacramento Utilities. My name was still on the address label, but inside, a notice. Service transfer request, initiated by Vera. No conversation, no explanation. Just a quiet shift. One more thing handed off without asking. My hand gripped the counter's edge as I reread the document. It wasn't the first time I noticed something odd. Lately, there had been a pattern, small things. Decorations arriving I didn't order. Furniture moved. Deliveries showing up with Callista's name but my address. It was like I'd been slipping, inch by inch, out of ownership. It wasn't always like this. 5 years ago, when we first bought this house, I was the only one in the family with a solid credit score. My job at the credit union was stable, my debt manageable. I remember the conversation at the dinner table like it was yesterday. "You're the only one who can qualify, sweetheart," Mom had said, stirring sugar into her tea like the request was casual. "It's just a formality." Dad nodded, adding, "Family comes first. We trust you. You trust us, right?" I did. Or I thought I did. There was something flattering about being the reliable one, the one with it together. So I signed. Now here I was, standing in a kitchen where my name was still on the deed, but apparently not on the decisions. The real shift started the week Callista's birthday invitations went out. I hadn't seen them beforehand. I just found one on the counter one evening, addressed to Family and Friends of Callista Rose. The invitation said, "Hosted at Callista's residence." My residence. At first, I told myself it was a typo, or maybe she was just wording it that way for social media clout. You know, appearances. That was her thing. Everything filtered, everything scripted. But then the decorations started arriving. Callista's fiancé, Troy, brought in cases of wine and stacked them in my dining room without a word. Vera fluttered around, taping up pastel garlands, waving off my questions like I was being dramatic. "It's just for a day, honey," she chirped. "Let your sister have her moment." But every moment seemed to take more space. That Thursday afternoon, I walked into the living room and heard Vera on the phone. She was laughing, her bright, rehearsed kind of laugh. "Yes, we're almost ready," she said. "Callista's party's gonna be lovely. It's at her house this year. Finally." Finally? I stood there behind the staircase wall, invisible, listening. That night, I stayed up past midnight. I opened my laptop, logged into the property site, pulled up the title, my name, no changes, no additions. I stared at it like it was supposed to anchor me. But the next day, it all chipped a little more. Callista was walking through the house with her friend Becca, one of those women who always wears sunglasses indoors. They were sipping sparkling water from glasses I hadn't seen before. "This place looks amazing," Becca said. "I can't believe your parents gave it to you." Callista smirked. "Well, they basically did. I mean, it's been in the works for a while." I turned the corner into the kitchen and locked eyes with Callista. Her face didn't flicker. She kept sipping, Becca, red-faced, fumbled out, "Wait, this isn't yours yet?" "No," I said, flat, controlled. Callista just rolled her eyes and muttered, "Details." That was the moment something changed in me. I didn't yell, didn't storm out, but I felt the cold set in. That night, I began tracking everything. Not just the paperwork, the tone. The way Vera would say your sister's place and catch herself. The way Clive handed Troy the keys to the side gate without even looking at me. The way every family group email now had Callista CC'd first, and I was missing from some entirely. I started a folder. House, evidence. It made me feel ridiculous at first, but then it made me feel smart, because when you're gaslit for long enough, you start to doubt your own shadow. Then it happened. At exactly 6:47 p.m., my phone buzzed with a push alert from the smart home app. Access administrator privileges changed. I blinked. Then tried logging in. Password invalid. I walked downstairs. Vera was in the den, on speakerphone, folding napkins. "She won't say no," I heard her say. "She never does. We just need the papers ready before the party." I stopped at the bottom of the stairs, my foot on the last step. Papers? I didn't know it yet, but the house I paid for was about to become someone else's birthday surprise. The next morning, I woke up early. My body wasn't fully rested, but my mind was wide awake. Something about Vera's voice the night before had crawled under my skin. "She never says no." That wasn't a compliment. That was a playbook. I sat up in bed, pulled the blanket aside, and reached for my phone. I tapped the smart home app. The login screen blinked red. Incorrect password. I tried again. Same result. For a moment, I thought maybe I'd been locked out for inactivity. But then I checked my email. No system notifications, no password reset requests. Just silence. That's when the chill settled in. I got up, grabbed my robe, and headed to the front door. The manual override was supposed to be simple. Tap the touchpad, punch in the emergency code. I tapped. The screen buzzed. Red. I tried it twice more. Same response. The keypad blinked like it didn't know me anymore. Back in the kitchen, I dialed the customer service line. After the usual prompts, I finally got a rep named Alan. "Looks like the admin account was updated yesterday afternoon," he said casually. "Do you want us to resend the confirmation email?" "Resend it to who?" I asked. There was a pause. Then, "It's now registered under callista-homeugmail.com. I let that hang in the air. "Is that not you?" "No, Alan, it's not." When I hung up, I just stood there for a few seconds, letting it all soak in. The app, the lock, the email. They weren't just rearranging furniture. They were rewriting the script and cutting my name from the cast list. By the time I made it to the dining room, Vera and Callista were already having breakfast like nothing had happened. Yogurt, sliced melon, that weird herbal tea they both pretended to like. "Morning," I said, folding my arms. Vera looked up. "Sweetheart, you look tired." I couldn't get into my own front door. Callista didn't even flinch. "Oh, that. Mom said it was a glitch. She had it fixed." "Fixed?" "For convenience," Vera added. "The party planners need easier access." I stared at them. "And it didn't occur to either of you to tell me?" Vera sighed, like she was explaining taxes to a child. "Don't make this about you, Venetia. You overthink things." "Overthink?" I thought. Or maybe I just think it all. A few minutes later, as guests arrived for early party prep, someone, I think it was Callista's assistant, handed me a silver tray. "Could you refill the glasses, hon?" I blinked at her. She genuinely thought I was staff. I said nothing. Just walked the tray to the kitchen and placed it down. Calm. Quiet. Focused. After everyone left, I opened my laptop and logged into my online banking. The screen glitched for a second, then kicked me out. Access restricted. I tried the mobile app. Same thing. I called the bank. The woman on the line confirmed the worst. Someone changed the login credentials in person yesterday at 3:42 p.m. at our East Elk Grove branch. And you let them? They presented ID matching the account, she said. Of course they did. I sat back in my chair, heart pounding. Not from fear, but from clarity. It wasn't paranoia. It wasn't me being dramatic. It was theft in slow motion. I opened a new folder on my desktop. House evidence. I started taking screenshots, email headers, app messages, bank confirmation calls. Every name, every timestamp, every decision made without me. They were counting on me to panic, to scream, to beg. But I didn't. That would have made it easier for them to paint me as unstable. No, I'd stay measured, sharp, cold if I had to. That night, I was upstairs folding laundry when I heard Clive's voice carry from the backyard patio. He wasn't yelling, just talking, like it was all perfectly normal. She'll be fine, he said. Callista deserves the house. Venetia just held it for a while. I didn't move. I just turned off the hallway light and leaned against the wall. They had stopped seeing me a long time ago. But now, I had started seeing them. Link to next chapter. I didn't know how far they'd go until a stranger told me their story, and I saw myself in it. The next morning, I slipped on a hoodie and stepped outside before anyone else in the house was up. The air was cool but soft, carrying the kind of quiet that makes you want to walk without checking your destination. I didn't have a plan. I just needed out. The walls inside were beginning to feel like they had ears. Or worse, like they'd started agreeing with everyone but me. I wandered 2 blocks over and ended up on Rose Hill Lane, where Mrs. Carmen Linney lived. Her front yard was a patchwork of flower beds and uneven paving stones, but it always smelled like lavender. She was out front, wearing her usual oversized sun hat, spraying her roses with the same care someone might give a newborn. She spotted me right away. "Venetia," she called, pausing mid-spray. "You look like you need a cup of something hot." I forced a smile and nodded. "Only if it comes with a side of honesty." She laughed. "Honey, that's all I serve." We sat on her porch. She handed me a chipped mug of chamomile tea, her answer for everything from heartbreak to heartburn. She didn't push, just let the silence breathe until I filled it. "They're planning something," I finally said. "I don't have proof, yet, but it feels like I'm watching someone else move into my life and call it theirs." Carmen leaned back in her chair, eyes tracing the shape of a bird feeder swinging in the breeze. "That sounds familiar," she said after a beat. "My son did that. Promised I could live with him after I got older. That I wouldn't need to worry about anything. Said he'd take care of everything if I just put the house in his name. Made it sound like I'd be saving everyone trouble." My hands tightened around the mug. She continued. 2 years later, his wife decided they needed space. Sent me brochures for assisted living. A week after I moved out, the house was sold. I didn't know what to say. Carmen looked at me and smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. "You know what hurt the most?" she asked. "It wasn't the papers. It was realizing they'd been calling that house theirs long before it legally was. They just waited for me to believe it too." We sat there for a long while. Her story settled in my bones like something I should have already known. By the time I got back home, the house looked different to me. Not physically, but every corner felt claimed. I walked past the living room and saw a new security camera mounted high near the ceiling. One I hadn't approved. One I hadn't paid for. I found Callista in the kitchen, spreading avocado on toast like nothing had happened. "What's that camera?" I asked, nodding toward the lens. She barely glanced up. "I had it installed yesterday, for security." "You didn't think to ask?" She shrugged. "You never know who might be snooping around." Vera walked in behind her, holding her phone. "It's better this way," she said. "We all live here. Might as well make it safe." Safe? For who? That night, I didn't stay silent. I grabbed my keys and drove across town to Maribel's law office. She was still there, no surprise. Maribel had the kind of quiet hustle you don't notice until you realize she's always 5 steps ahead. I sat down across from her desk, dropped my folder on the table, and said, "I'm not asking for help, not yet, but I need to know what to look out for." She looked at me for a long moment, then opened a drawer and pulled out a checklist. "Start with an ownership audit," she said. "Make sure nothing's been quietly signed away. Monitor all devices, cameras, locks, accounts. Document every change, every email. Don't say anything, just gather." I took the list and nodded. Before I left, she handed me another piece of paper. "You've got more leverage than you think," she said, "but only if you act before they finish the story for you." Later that night, back home, I found a group email waiting in my inbox. Subject line: Callista's new chapter. It was a party invite, RSVP included. Location listed simply, Callista's residence. They hadn't even changed the locks yet. But the narrative? That had already been rewritten. I printed the email, slipped it into my folder, and turned off the lights. The dinner was supposed to be casual, a quiet evening with family and a few guests, all under the pretense of celebration prep. The long dining table was decorated with neutral flowers, subtle string lights, and pastel napkins folded with surgical precision. I knew Vera had coordinated every inch. She always did. Callista sat at the head of the table like it was hers by birthright. Troy, her fiancé, hovered around her with a camera, filming clips for what I guessed would be another overly filtered birthday montage. Clive poured himself a glass of whiskey, and Vera held a flute of sparkling cider. Something in the air felt pre-planned, but I couldn't name it yet. Then Vera tapped her glass. "I just want to say how proud we are of Callista," she began, with that syrupy tone she reserved for guests and strangers. "And to everyone who helped us make this next step possible, thank you." My gut clenched. She turned to Clive, who opened a folder with deliberate ceremony and slid it onto the center of the table. Troy adjusted his phone's angle. Callista leaned forward, pretending to be surprised. It was all theater. "And, of course," Vera added, with a rehearsed smile, "we have one last surprise." No one else at the table looked confused. No raised eyebrows, no sideways glances. Just polite anticipation. Clive cleared his throat. "Tomorrow, for Callista's birthday, we will officially transfer ownership of this home. It will be hers, our gift to her. She's earned it." Applause followed. Light, measured clapping like it was a hallmark moment. I didn't move. They already told everyone but me. Callista looked straight at me. "It's been a long time coming, right, sis?" My chest felt tight, but I didn't let my face betray me. I just blinked slowly and nodded once, almost imperceptibly. Later, I spotted a few leftover party flyers in Vera's bag near the hallway bench. They read, "Celebrating Callista's new chapter," at her home. Her home. The same one I had poured my salary, my weekends, my patience into. Apparently now, hers. Back in the dining room, Clive pushed a pen across the table toward me. The folder was open now. I could see the title, Voluntary Property Transfer. "All we need is your signature," he said. "Let's make it official, for family's sake." Vera chimed in with a practiced softness. "You've always said family matters most." I could feel every eye in the room, watching, waiting, expecting. I looked at the pen. My hand didn't shake from fear. It shook from fury. "So this was the plan?" I said, voice level. "It's not a plan," Vera replied quickly. "It's a gesture of love, a new season. You're doing this for your sister." I picked up the folder, flipped through the pages, then gently closed it. "I'll review it with my legal advisor," I said, keeping my tone even. "You'll have it back, if it makes sense." That shifted the energy. Clive's jaw tensed. "You don't need a lawyer. This is a family matter." "Then maybe," I replied, "you shouldn't have had one draft it." No one laughed. Callista shifted in her seat. Troy stopped recording. I stood, took the folder with me, and walked out of the room without another word. Back in my bedroom, I placed the file next to my laptop, next to my growing collection of receipts, screenshots, and logs. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just breathed in the quiet and felt a kind of calm I hadn't known in weeks. Later that night, my phone buzzed. Callista had posted a story on Instagram. The caption read, "Tomorrow I get the gift I've always deserved." The video was a slow pan of the backyard lights, her smile bright, Vera laughing softly in the background. No mention of me, no tag. My inbox lit up within minutes. Relatives I hadn't spoken to in months were suddenly congratulating me. "You're such a good sister," one message read. "Family first, always," said another. I didn't respond. I just added each name to a new list in my folder. Spectators. Because if they were going to cast me in their story, I would at least keep track of the audience. By morning, my phone was already begging for mercy. 37 unread messages and counting. The first one that lit up my screen was from a number I didn't save. But the preview was enough. "Wow, didn't expect that from you." I knew before opening it that Callista had posted something. I pulled up her page and saw the video pinned at the top of her feed. Her voice was soft, the background dimly lit with strings of fairy lights that I had paid for. She looked straight into the lens with those dewy, sympathetic eyes she reserved for her followers. "Some people just don't understand the value of family," she said, "but I still believe in grace." The comment section was an avalanche, strangers calling me bitter, ungrateful, selfish. Some used phrases like classic younger sibling syndrome and she should be thankful to be part of something bigger than herself. I said no to losing everything. And somehow, that made me evil. Around 6 that evening, Vera texted me, "Family meeting in the living room. No drama, please." The words wrapped themselves around my throat like a silk scarf, pulling tighter. I walked in to find everyone already seated, as if this were a staged intervention. Callista sat in the middle like a princess on trial, except no one had any intention of finding her guilty. Clive stood. "We didn't raise you to be cold, Venetia." I didn't flinch. Vera opened a folder and began reading aloud like she was presenting a case in court. "Let's remember who fed you, clothed you, supported your education, covered you during layoffs. We've made sacrifices, emotional and financial, and we never asked for anything in return until now." Then came the real kicker. One of our aunts, Margot, who always wore too much perfume and carried a faux sense of wisdom, stood up and said, "You should be ashamed. We all gave to this family. It's your turn now." I looked around the room. No one met my eyes. Not one. I didn't defend myself. I didn't raise my voice or fold into tears like they wanted. Instead, I walked out. Calm, measured. Not because I wasn't furious, because fury wouldn't serve me in that room. Later that night, Vera sent me a message. Not a call, not a knock on the door, just a text with a link and a caption that read, "For your heart." I opened it. It was an article titled, "Real Children Know When to Give Back." Underneath, her words, "Just something to reflect on. We all love you, even if we're hurt right now." I read it 3 times. Then I deleted it. Love doesn't come with contracts. Ownership papers do. I didn't say a word in response. Instead, I took a screenshot of the message, renamed the file, and added it to my growing collection. House. Evidence. Psychological pressure. Day 5. I called Maribel. When she answered, I didn't even say hello. "I think it's time to talk seriously." There was a pause, then her voice. "Tomorrow morning. My office. Bring everything." Just before midnight, I was sitting in bed when I heard footsteps down the hall. They stopped at my door. A soft knock. "Venetia." Vera's voice was gentle, but I didn't answer. I opened the door just as she raised her hand to knock again. She held a fresh printout in one hand. Her smile was thin and practiced. "If you love us, you'll do this. It's just a signature." I looked at the paper, then at her. I didn't say anything. I closed the door. Not with anger. With intention. The morning of Callista's birthday was unnervingly perfect. Blue skies, trimmed hedges, the smell of something sweet already in the air. Guests began arriving in heels and button-downs, balancing gift bags and bottles of wine like this was some charity gala instead of a house hijacking. I kept to myself as long as I could, holed up in my room, moving slowly, choosing a plain navy blouse and black slacks. No makeup, no jewelry, no pretending. By noon, the backyard was full. Music floated through the open windows. Vera's laugh carried, too loud, too polished. I could hear Troy directing people with his signature brand of fake charm, ushering folks to the drink table like he owned the property. I made my way downstairs, each step deliberate, as if I were descending into a play I hadn't auditioned for. The chandelier sparkled above the dining room, casting warm light over a space that no longer felt like mine. No one noticed me at first. I stood near the back corner, a ghost in my own home. Callista was standing center stage, literally next to the grand fireplace. Troy had his phone raised, recording. A woman I didn't recognize clapped excitedly when Vera handed Callista a wrapped box that looked like it held jewelry. Then Callista lifted her glass. "To the two people who've never stopped believing in me," she said, voice delicate, almost teary. "My parents, for giving me the one thing that truly says, you belong, this home." Applause broke out. My fingers curled tightly around the glass in my hand. I didn't drink. I didn't move. A man in his 50s turned toward me, probably one of Clive's colleagues. His face was earnest, almost apologetic. "You must be so proud," he said. "When did you decide to give it to her?" I stared at him. The silence stretched. "I didn't," I replied. The music cut. Conversations froze mid-sentence. Glasses paused mid-sip. Vera stepped in fast. "Not now, Venetia." But the damage was done. Clive stood from the buffet table, fists clenched, his face flushed like he was holding back a storm. Without a word, he strode toward the cake, 3 tiers of white frosting and sugar roses, pristine and untouched. And then, without hesitation, he picked up the entire thing and slammed it into my face. Gasps erupted. A few phones came up. Flash. Click. Silence. Frosting clung to my hair, my collar, my lashes. Cream dripped down into the front of my blouse. The smell of vanilla filled my nose. Clive's voice was low, guttural. "You've embarrassed this family enough." I stood there for a moment, breathing slowly, blinking through the sugary haze. Then I turned and walked toward the staircase. I didn't wipe my face. I didn't speak. I left a trail of white on the hardwood with every step. Upstairs, my bedroom door was ajar. Inside, 3 cardboard boxes sat stacked near the closet. My suitcase was zipped, placed neatly beside them. On the bed, a folded piece of paper. "Please don't make this harder, just go." Mom, this wasn't a tantrum, it was a transfer. I was never meant to leave with dignity. They made sure of that. I changed my shirt, wiped frosting from my neck, and pulled my hair into a low bun. I didn't take the boxes. I didn't grab the suitcase. I walked back downstairs, through the still stunned crowd. Their faces turned away when I passed. Some stared at the floor. A few whispered to each other. One woman, a neighbor maybe, murmured, "I'm so sorry." I didn't answer. I opened the front door, stepped into the sun, and walked to my car. I could hear the party resume behind me. The music started again, just a notch too loud. The frosting on my sleeve had already begun to dry. I started the engine and didn't look back. I didn't drive home. I didn't call anyone. I went straight to Maribel's condo. She opened the door before I even knocked, like she'd been waiting. She didn't say a word, just handed me a towel and stepped aside so I could walk in. Her place smelled like eucalyptus and quiet, which was exactly what I needed. In the bathroom, I peeled off my frosting-stained clothes and stood under the shower until the water turned cold. Afterward, she handed me fresh clothes, sweats, a plain t-shirt, and a hot mug of mint tea. We didn't talk until I opened my laptop and plugged in the hard drive. It blinked to life, a tiny blue light, and with it came something sharp and steady inside me. I clicked open the folder labeled House Evidence and began pulling up the files: screenshots, emails, utility notices, camera logs. Maribel sat beside me, silent, watching. "That video of Clive?" I asked. She nodded. "Saved, timestamped. And the footage from before the smart system was locked out? Still retrievable?" We scrolled through the spreadsheet she'd built out of my uploads. Ownership records, mortgage statements, deed filings. No co-signers, no shared title, just me. "Your name, your payments, your house," she said. "Legally, it's airtight." I exhaled slowly. "They've already stepped over 2 state-level lines," she added. "Unauthorized access to security systems and public defamation with implied claims of ownership. We're not just talking moral wrongs anymore." The next morning, I was still at her place, sipping reheated coffee and staring at the ceiling when there was a knock at the door. Maribel picked up the envelope slid underneath and handed it to me with a sigh. Legal letterhead, from the law offices of Dalton and Reeve. A firm Vera had mentioned once, smugly, like name-dropping a country club. I skimmed the contents. Claim of emotional distress. Request for damages tied to an embarrassing incident at a family event. Accusations of reputational harm. "They're claiming you humiliated them," Maribel said, scanning over my shoulder. "They're threatening to sue me for being assaulted with cake?" I asked. She raised an eyebrow. "They're betting you'll cave before we escalate." I folded the letter and set it aside. "Then we escalate." Maribel didn't smile. She just nodded and pulled up a blank document. "Cease and desist first, then formal notice of trespass. I want a statement on your front door before they host another tea party on your dime." I stayed quiet while she typed. My hands itched to do something, so I flipped through the printed copies of my documents. Property tax records, photos of the damaged lock panel, even a printout of the group message thread where Callista referred to the house as our family estate. I wasn't just reclaiming walls and ceilings. I was reclaiming space I was never allowed to defend before. By late afternoon, I decided to return to the house, not to stay, just to retrieve what mattered. The driveway was full of cars, but the living room was mostly empty. Callista opened the door. She looked surprised, but only for a second. "You're brave showing up here again," she said, crossing her arms. "And you're still here like it's yours," I replied, stepping past her. She didn't block me. She didn't follow. In my old room, the boxes were still there. I picked up the last one: files, charger cords, a few books I didn't want to repurchase. I didn't linger. On my way out, I passed Vera in the hallway. She turned her face slightly, as if a glance might burn her. I didn't speak, neither did she. I walked to my car, opened the trunk, and placed the box inside. The sun was already low, casting long shadows across the lawn. As I slid into the driver's seat, I looked once more at the house through the rearview mirror. They started a war over walls. I brought proof to burn their foundation. The morning of the mediation, I woke before sunrise. Maribel met me outside the courthouse with 2 cups of coffee and a silence I didn't need to fill. We walked through the security checkpoint without a word, our heels echoing off polished floors. I carried the black folder tucked under my arm. My palms didn't sweat. My breath stayed steady. We were shown to a small conference room with beige walls and a long glass table. The mediator was already there, shuffling papers. A few minutes later, they arrived. Clive, Vera, Callista, and a man in a tailored suit whose cufflinks probably cost more than my entire wardrobe. No one said good morning. The mediator gestured for everyone to sit. "Let's begin with preliminary statements." Maribel reached into her briefcase and pulled out a USB. "For the record," she said evenly, "we'd like to enter this as Exhibit A." She handed it to the mediator, who nodded and inserted it into a laptop. Vera shifted uncomfortably. Clive tapped the table with one finger. Callista crossed her legs too quickly, spilling her purse onto the floor. The audio began to play. It was scratchy at first, then unmistakable. Vera's voice, smooth and smug. Let her pay the mortgage. Then we take it. She's too soft to fight. No one spoke. Clive tried to interject, but the mediator raised a hand. Please allow the recording to finish. There was more. Snippets of Vera planning, laughing, using words like positioning and optics. Callista's voice agreeing, she won't push back. She never does. When the audio ended, silence returned, heavier than before. I looked across the table. Vera was pale. Clive looked down at the floor. Callista stared at her hands like they weren't hers. I opened my folder and began reading aloud. Property title, in my name. Mortgage payments, utilities, tax records, also in my name. No co-ownership, no transfer agreements, no legal claim by any other party. I looked at them one by one. You do not live there legally. You have no right to represent the property. You have no right to use my name in public as if you share anything with it. Maribel folded her hands. Our client is prepared to settle on 2 conditions. 1. All individuals vacate the property within 10 business days. 2. There is to be no further communication with our client in any personal or public setting. Callista's voice cracked first. You'd ruin everything over a house? I tilted my head. You tried to ruin me for it. The mediator called for a short break. Clive stood and walked out without a word. Vera remained seated, her jaw tight. Callista, always so composed, dabbed her eyes with a tissue from her purse. I didn't look away. This wasn't closure. It was justice. When we left the building, reporters were already waiting. Someone had leaked the mediation. Maybe it was their attorney. Maybe it was a cousin trying to stir the pot. Maribel stepped in front of me, but I didn't hide. I walked beside her, eyes forward. They shouted questions, asked if I forgave my family, if I planned to press charges, if I'd be selling the house. I didn't answer. I didn't have to. Because sometimes silence isn't weakness. It's the loudest truth in the room. By the next morning, the buzz had traveled far beyond our small circle. I was sipping coffee in my apartment kitchen when my inbox lit up like fireworks. Messages from former classmates, colleagues, even a woman I hadn't spoken to since my freshman dorm. I saw the article. Proud of you. This kind of silence takes strength. One message simply read, that recording though. A legal blogger had posted a piece, anonymous but unmistakably about us. It didn't name names, but the story aligned too closely for anyone who knew us to miss the connection. Inheritance warfare, they called it, the quiet casualties of familial greed. It struck a chord. By noon, the article had been shared over 8,000 times. Someone had also leaked the full audio recording. That part wasn't me. I found out who later. Callista's PR girl had accidentally sent it to a freelance podcast host she was trying to impress. The host uploaded it uncut. Within hours, it had been clipped, memed, turned into a TikTok series. There was Vera's voice, clear, smug, cutting. Let her pay the mortgage. Then we take it. She's too soft to fight. No background music, no edits, just cold strategy. When I called Maribel to tell her, she chuckled. They cracked their own image. You didn't even have to press publish. Vera tried to spin it, posting a vague Facebook status about misunderstood intentions. But the comments beneath it told a different story. Clive said nothing at all. That afternoon, I returned to work at the Community Finance Center. I hadn't been in since the birthday incident. My coworkers greeted me politely, professionally. But something had shifted. A longtime colleague, Marcy, avoided my eyes in the break room. As I poured myself a cup of stale coffee, she finally said, Hey, I heard about what happened. My mom would have disowned me if I ever did that to her. Her words weren't cruel, just ignorant. I didn't correct her. I didn't need to. I smiled once, flat, unreadable, and walked back to my desk. Even when you win, you bleed a little. On Saturday, I stopped by the grocery store for essentials. Just as I was picking up a carton of eggs, I saw her, Callista. She was standing alone by the self-checkout, sunglasses on indoors, wearing an oversized hoodie that didn't quite fit her usual brand. No Troy, no entourage. She looked tired. She noticed me, but didn't say a word, just gave me a glance that held no malice, only exhaustion. I didn't break stride. I didn't smile. This wasn't revenge. This was consequence. That evening, I did some quiet housekeeping, of a different kind. I opened the family group chat and removed myself. Click, gone. No announcement. Then I opened the shared cloud photo album from 2 years ago. Pictures of holidays, backyard barbecues, even the paint swatches from when I'd remodeled the kitchen. I deleted every upload with my name on it. Next, I changed the locks. Again. Only this time, the system had one login. Mine. No backups. No shared access. No secrets. I stood in the entryway and took a deep breath. The house still smelled like lemon wood polish, like the one thing I had insisted on keeping after Vera tried to switch it to something more modern. For once, the silence inside wasn't empty. It was mine. The morning light filtered through the kitchen blinds in soft streaks. I was barefoot, standing by the sink, sipping a cup of coffee I didn't remember making. The house was still, fully mine, and the quiet felt earned. My phone buzzed on the counter, a text from Sheila, my supervisor at the Community Finance Center. Just a simple line. Can you stop by my office when you come in today? There was no tension in my chest this time, just curiosity. When I walked into the office later that day, coworkers looked up, not away. Their nods were no longer laced with discomfort. A few even smiled, like they finally saw me for the woman who had weathered a public storm and hadn't flinched. Sheila closed her door behind me and gestured toward the chair across from her desk. I don't normally say this, she began, but what you've gone through, the way you handled yourself, it's been inspiring to watch. I blinked. I'd like to invite you to speak on a local panel. It's through the Women's Civic League. Just a few voices on personal advocacy and housing rights. Quiet, no press. But they asked for someone with a story like yours. I nodded slowly. I'll think about it. After work, I came home to a package on my porch. No return address. Inside was a handwritten card and a bouquet of fresh daisies. From neighbors who never knew the full story. But now we do. We believe you. And we're sorry. The next morning, there was another envelope. This one slid through the mail slot. A typed letter from a name I hadn't seen in years. Mrs. Alden, my middle school English teacher. You always were the one they underestimated, she wrote. You never raised your voice, but you never let yourself be erased either. I pressed the letter flat and placed it inside my keepsake box. The same one Vera had once told me to toss already. It's full of junk. The internet had its own way of settling scores. A viral clip had surfaced overnight. Callista's old video, the one where she smiled at the camera and said, I was gifted a home by love. But this time, someone had layered the court audio over it. The contrast was damning. Comment sections exploded. You stole from your sister and called it gratitude? This is what privilege looks like when no one says no. This is why silence isn't consent. I didn't share it. I didn't comment. And yet, my name was everywhere. Articles, reaction videos, even op-eds about financial abuse within families. I never asked for this spotlight. I just wanted peace. As for Vera and Clive, they said nothing. Issued no statements. No press rebuttals. But someone from the HOA mentioned, offhandedly, that their house had a moving truck out front last weekend, and that the board had quietly removed them from their positions. The silence around them was growing, and it wasn't the empowering kind. Meanwhile, I didn't post, didn't upload any selfies with victorious captions. I didn't owe the internet my healing. Instead, I walked my dog past the courthouse that afternoon. Slow, easy pace. No headphones. Just the sound of my steps on the sidewalk. A few people glanced at me. Some recognized me. One older woman nodded once, respectful. That was enough. Later, I stopped by the hardware store and picked up paint samples for the kitchen. Soft tones this time. Sage, muted cream. A color called warm linen. Nothing bold, just peaceful. Because some applause doesn't need to be heard. Just felt. The paint samples sat untouched on the kitchen counter. I hadn't even opened them. Instead, I spent the next few days moving through the house like someone repacking their skin. Slower, quieter, but with new layers of strength. I thought I was done. I truly did. Then the phone rang. The number was familiar, but distant. Elaine, my cousin from Clive's side. More Christmas card than kin. The kind of relative you only see at funerals or baby showers. I hadn't heard from her in at least 6 years. I almost didn't answer, but something in my gut said I should. "Hey," she said. Her voice was soft, like she wasn't sure if she was allowed to speak. "Hi," I replied. There was a pause. "I read everything," she said. "I'm sorry, really, but I need to tell you something." We agreed to meet the next morning at a small coffee shop downtown, one with creaky wooden chairs and no Wi-Fi, just old books on crooked shelves and a chalkboard menu that never changed. Elaine arrived wearing a cardigan 2 sizes too big and eyes that looked like they hadn't slept in days. She hugged me briefly, like she wasn't sure she was allowed to. "I don't know if this helps or makes it worse," she started, "but this isn't the first time they've done this." I didn't speak. I just let her keep going. "It happened to Aunt Tessa, too," she said. "Back in the early 2000s. You were probably in high school." I blinked. I remembered Aunt Tessa vaguely. Quiet, funny in a dry way, loved birdwatching. Then, suddenly, she was gone. No drama, no goodbye, just gone. "They convinced her to sign over the family cottage," Elaine continued. "Said it was just to refinance. Said they'd help her retire early. Within 6 months, it was listed on the market. Sold. She ended up in a rental in Bakersfield." I sat back in my chair. "She tried to speak up once," Elaine added, "at a reunion. But no one believed her. Clive told everyone she was unstable. Vera called it early dementia. And the worst part? They told us not to talk to her, that she wanted distance." My hands tightened around the mug. "They rewrite the story," Elaine said softly, "but only if no one remembers." I nodded once. It wasn't shock I felt, it was confirmation. After we parted ways, I drove straight home, sat at my kitchen counter. The house didn't feel different, but I did. I saw the walls for what they were, witnesses, not victims. I didn't feel grief anymore, just recognition. Forgiveness isn't a requirement for freedom. Distance is. That evening, I opened my journal, not the digital one, the leather-bound one Vera had once mocked me for keeping. I wrote a letter, not to send, not to post, just to make it real. To Vera, Clive, and Callista, I no longer owe you my silence. I no longer owe you my presence. You will live with your version of this story. I will live with mine. And this time, mine is written down. No edits, no filters, no family votes. Just facts. I signed it, folded it, and tucked it into the back of the journal. Afterward, I logged into the Wi-Fi router and changed the network name. Still standing. It made me laugh, just a little. The kind of laugh that knows it's not about being loud, it's about being here. Then I opened the last thread in my email, the one labeled Family. I selected all, hit archive, and let the quiet settle. No fireworks, no declarations, just peace. Closure isn't always a door shutting. Sometimes it's one you never open again. I was cleaning out the last storage bin in the garage, the one marked MISC, don't trash, when I found the envelope. Yellowed with age, stuffed behind a stack of college notebooks, it had my name written in Clive's blocky handwriting. Venetia, graduation day. Inside was a single page, folded into thirds. "I see in you the kind of strength I never had," he had written. I read it twice, then a third time. That version of him, whoever he was when he wrote those words, had existed, but he didn't stay. I set the letter on the workbench and leaned back, letting the memory settle before it could rot. There was no longing, no ache, just recognition. That weekend, I finished painting the last room in the house, the office, soft sage green, exactly the color I had imagined when I'd picked it from the hardware store wall. I did every corner myself, no hired help, no friends to oversee, just me, a brush, and time. On Sunday, I planted a dogwood tree in the backyard. No one asked me to. No one watched. I wasn't doing it for symbolism. I just wanted something living in the ground that hadn't been touched by the people who once tried to erase me from it. That evening, I set the dining table for 4. No formal placemats, no good china, just clean plates, warm food, and laughter that didn't come at someone else's expense. Maribel arrived first, then Elaine, and 2 coworkers who had quietly checked on me when things got hard, never demanding details, just letting me know I wasn't invisible. We ate, we shared stories, none of them about what I'd lost, only about what we were building now. No one brought up Vera, or Clive, or Callista. And I didn't either. I later heard that Vera and Clive had moved to a condo in Tucson, that Callista had scrubbed her influencer pages clean, disappearing from the platforms that once treated her like royalty. No statements, no apologies, but someone had written an article, anonymous, just a few paragraphs long, passed around on forums and small Facebook groups. Some wounds don't leave scars, they leave silence. It didn't say who it was about, but I knew. The following week, I started volunteering with a mentorship program for women navigating family estrangement. Divorce, betrayal, silence, financial control. It showed up in many forms, across every kind of family. In my intro session, when they asked me why I joined, I kept it simple. You don't have to forgive people who didn't ask for it, I said. You only need to choose peace. Later, I walked home under a pale sky and let myself unlock the front door without rushing. I took my time walking in. The house smelled like clean linen and sandalwood. I had finally changed out that old diffuser Vera had insisted on. The walls were new, the art was mine, the light fixtures replaced. No one else had a key. I paused in the entryway and ran my fingers along the doorframe. It had once held a mark, Clive's height line for Callista, scribbled in pencil. I'd painted over it last week, not out of spite, out of survival. They tried to rename this place, but it always knew my name. The house never needed to be a gift. I was always the one worth giving back to.